Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life.
Steve Jobs was a man who revolutionized the computer industry. From creating the first ever monitor display computer to designing a revolutionary mobile phone. Who is Steve Jobs? What was his legacy? What did he do to change America? Steve Jobs, Uncovered. Steve Jobs was born on February 24th, 1955. He was biologically born to these 2 people, Abdul Fattah Jandali and Joanne Schiebel. Her parents didn't approve of her having a child at only 22 years old, so she was forced to put Steve Jobs up for adoption. Immediately, Paul and Clara Jobs signed up for the adoption. At first, Schiebel was thrilled, but she later found out that Paul and Clara Jobs had never graduated from college. Schiebel refused to sign the adoption papers until the Jobs family finally promised to make Steve Jobs go to college. This was the start of Steve Jobs' small yet valuable life.
And 17 years later, I did go to college.
In 1972, Steve Jobs did go to college just as his adoptive parents had promised Jobs' biological mother. He had chosen Reed College, one of the most expensive colleges at the time. After 1 semester, Steve Jobs lost interest of going to college, which led him to drop out of Reed.
The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this.
Steve Jobs' life from now on would change forever. Bill Fernandez, who was friends with Jobs at the time, had introduced Steve Wozniak, or Woz, to Jobs. Despite the age difference, the two hit it off from the start. Jobs admired that Wozniak knew more about electronics than he did, and felt like his maturity and Woz's immaturity just about matched. And before he knew it, the two started working on a company that would change the world. One day, Jobs came to Woz's apartment. He was fascinated by the circuit board that Woz had made. As Jobs tried to sell the circuit board, he ran into this new computer store called the Byte Shop, and he began to pitch Paul Terrell, the owner of the Byte Shop. Jobs was instantly in love with the idea of making an electronics company, but he needed somebody who was smarter and better with electronics than he was, and that was Woz.
Woz was more of a, give me the design, I'll make the product kind of a guy. And Jobs, usually the one who makes the design.
Jobs and Woz immediately started working on their prototype. As Apple grew, so did their works, including the creation of the Macintosh, which gave Steve Jobs' calligraphy class an actual purpose.
It was the first computer with beautiful typography.
The relationship between Apple and Jobs would go downhill from right now. Apple was in need of a true leader. In 1982, that search took Jobs right to John Sculley. He was a marketing man that knew how to sell to a younger generation. Sculley insisted he was happy in his job and loved the East Coast. But once Jobs decided Sculley was his man, he turned on the full force of his charm.
He said, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?"
Jobs, Woz, and Sculley made great accomplishments when they were together. However, when the sales of the Apple Macintosh stalled following its release in 1984, the two butted heads on the company's course and the relationship grew strained.
And then I got fired.
Is this the end of Steve Jobs' era in Apple?
After Steve left Apple the first time, he founded a new computer company called Next. The computer that they created and the software that ran on it allowed colleges and students to produce things on affordable machinery that they had never been able to do before. It was on one of these Next computers that Sir Tim Berners-Lee invented the first web server and first web browser, which gave rise to the internet.
After Jobs got fired, he didn't know what to do for a couple of months, but he realized he still loved what he did. He started founding more companies. This includes the multi-billion-dollar company Pixar Animation Studios. He used his expertise in computers to help with computer graphics and animations. Not only did he create Pixar, but he also created Next, another electronics company just like Apple. In 1996, CEO Gil Amelio started shopping around for a modern OS to buy. Some Next employees called up Apple and told them about their own system, Next Step. And Steve Jobs sold not only the OS, but also the whole company.
It was the acquisition of Next by Apple that allowed Steve Jobs to regain product control from the company that he originally founded with the Woz.
Steve Jobs did come back to Apple, replacing Gil Amelio as interim CEO. Will Steve Jobs' return to Apple become a fail or a success? He started working on a new Macintosh project with Apple's top designer, Johnny Ive. Ive's team came up with a box shaped more like a triangular pillow. In the first 6 weeks, Apple sold close to 300,000 iMacs. Up next came iTunes. It was a jukebox software to help music lovers upload, search for, and sort their CDs and other music. But what good was all that music on your hard drive if you could listen to it only when you were at your desk? That idea created the iPod. It was a simple display, and it had only forward, back, pause, and menu buttons. Johnny Ive encased it in pure white with a stainless steel back.
With the invention of iPod, Apple created a whole new category of digital music players.
Jobs' next obstacle would be life-threatening.
About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer.
He had a cancerous tumor in his pancreas, a glandular organ in the digestive and endocrine systems. But Jobs had a very rare, far less aggressive type known as islet cell neuroendocrine tumor. He refused to undergo surgery for his pancreatic cancer. He tried avoiding his surgery by taking a vegan diet, acupuncture, herbal remedies, and other treatments he found online. In July 2004, he had the Whipple procedure and successfully removed the tumor from the pancreas. Is this the end of Steve Jobs' health problems? There are no limits to Steve Jobs' accomplishments. Even after cancer, he was still able to make a phone that completely changed the way that the world looked at phones. The iPhone had an elegant glass screen that was developed by Corning Incorporated. The glass display extended further towards the edge of the phone. Customers lined up to pay $499 to $599 for an iPhone. In the first 3 months, Apple sold 1.4 million of them. Steve Jobs had another problem. His health began to decline. He was uncomfortable and in pain. Despite his struggle, he still managed to create new Macs, such as the MacBook Air. Apple's sales topped 65 billion. But on August 24th, Jobs resigned as chief executive of Apple, saying, "I have always said if there ever came a day when I could no longer meet my duties and expectations as Apple's CEO, I would be the first to let you know. Unfortunately, that day has come." And on October 5th, 2011, with his wife, his children, and both of his sisters near, Steve Jobs sadly passed away.
Steve was the most remarkably focused person I've ever met in my life.
Oh, his sense of design.
I think he's going to be remembered for
the categories of products that he took the world towards.
If you think about the things that Steve stood for at a macro level, he stood for innovation. He stood for the simple, not the complex.
Obviously, Steve will be missed and was a friend, and got to know Steve.
On behalf of me and everyone else in this world, we say, thank you, Steve Jobs. Thank you so much for your extremely great accomplishments. Millions of us will remember you every day. Thank you, Steve. The world is infinitely better thanks to you.